for this update on the case involving Julia Tomlin and the decedent Noah Tomlin. Sometime in the latter part of September of 2019, my office received a copy of the autopsy and the anthropology report concerning Noah Tomlin. In that report, we were advised of the nature and characteristics of his death, and as such, we are updating the public today as to the cause of death, as well as any updates to the case. According to the autopsy report, the cause of death of Noah Tomlin, age 4, is blunt force trauma, as well as battered child syndrome. In reading the autopsy report specifically, I want to quote certain areas so that the public has a clear understanding as to the nature of the severity of the injuries that were suffered by Noah Tomlin. When the body was received by the medical examiner, it was in a state of advanced decomposition, and as a result of that, an anthropologist was brought on board to help with the conducting of the medical autopsy. The liver was the only thing that was recognizable. In addition to that, the left leg was recognizable. There were severe bruises to that left leg, which were indications of some form of abuse. When the forensic anthropology analysis was conducted, the following conclusions were made: that there were severe skull and fractures to the skull. There was fatal blunt trauma without any indication of healing. Now, I want to be very clear, the level or severity of the blunt force trauma to the skull was so severe. In speaking to Dr. Gunther about the severity, she stated that the injury was as if, or I won't say similar, but the type of injury that this child suffered was the same as if a child that had fallen several stories from a building. So this injury was not only severe, but just horrific, to say the very least. In addition to that, there were several chronic battering injuries that were discovered. To quote the medical examiner, there was also evidence of chronic battering with extensive healing, jaw fractures, and 3 healing posterior rib fractures. So there were injuries to the jaw that had begun to heal. There were injuries to the ribs that had begun to heal as well. None of those things were the sole cause of death. However, they were contributing factors in the death of Noah Tomlin. To say the least, the nature of the abuse was of such a nature that clusters of Harris lines in each distal tibia and radius were discovered. Now, in plain language or layman terms, these are the type of injuries that you will find that will literally stop the growth of bones due to either some severe disease such as cancer, or some type of abuse, or even severe malnutrition. So his abuse was of such a nature that literally his bones stopped growing, and there were evidence of that. So as a result of her findings, her cause of death in her report, which I have authorized her to release to the public today, is blunt head trauma in addition to battered child syndrome. As a result of the findings of the medical examiners, I have authorized today Hampton Police Department to secure a warrant for murder of Noah Tomlin against Julia Tomlin. In addition, I have authorized the Hampton Police Department to secure a warrant for the unlawful disposal of the deceased person. At this time, I will open the floor to questions.
Anton, the injuries you described, it sounds like the mother tortured this child. Do we know for how long these injuries?
Well, there were injuries that were healing, and so we know that some of those injuries could be from days to actual weeks. But there are indications that they were not necessarily fresh. The injury that caused the death were 2 fractures to the skull. Those injuries had not healed at all. And as a result, we know that they were absolutely the cause of death. Now, to be a little bit more specific, because I had a very detailed conversation with the medical examiner, and I asked her, I said, could these injuries be caused by, let's say, a child who hit their head on a table, or a child who had fallen, like walking and fell, or even fell down some stairs? She said, no, if that was the case, most children would not make it to adulthood to have this severity of injuries that was present in this particular case. This injury or those injuries were consistent with someone who would have, who could have potentially fallen several stories from a building. So it was extreme in the nature of the injury.
Can you talk about, in your personal experience, what it's been like to see an autopsy report like this?
Well, I have been prosecuting for more than 20 plus years, and I've seen some very graphic things. I've seen some very horrific crime scenes, and I've even actually gone to a autopsy being performed, and nothing really kind of grabs you like seeing a child or a toddler being the victim of a crime, particularly something as horrific as this particular crime. There is no question in my mind, based on the evidence, this child was tortured.
Do we have any reason to believe that somebody else could have been involved in his death in addition to the mom?
Well, there are statements that were made by the defendant that makes her behavior exclusive to her.
Okay, so basically she didn't speak on anyone else.
Not only did she not speak on anyone else, she excluded other potential suspects.
Okay, but and then as far as you guys are concerned, are you guys still exploring other possible suspects in this death?
I'm always exploring. This case is fluid. As such, there are multiple moving parts. In fact, I am still looking at some potential alternatives concerning this matter, which I will update you if those matters come to fruition. But right now, we are looking solely at Julia Tomlin as far as the murder charge.
Do we have any more details on how the body ended up at the steam plant?
Yes, we do know exactly how the body ended up at the steam plant, but we're not releasing that.
So the charges you mentioned, do they both refer to Julia Tomlin, the unlawful disposal and the murder charge?
That's correct.
What does that mean for her case now?
What that means is I have authorized the charge to be taken out. The charges were secured this morning, and they were sent over to where she is now for her to be served with those charges. Within the next 2 business days or so, she probably will be in front of the Juvenile and Domestic Relations Court, and she will be arraigned on those charges. And will face those charges in addition to the current charges.
Have you had a chance in the last several days, weeks, months to talk to the family about this?
Well, here's the problem with that. The family in this matter, we're just finding out who the biological father is. And as a result of that, there have been some complications with that scenario. And so we basically have left that alone for now. Because there was some indication that it was someone else. We've now discovered through DNA it was actually another person.
Who?
I will not release that.
Now, we found some files that talked about blood in the home, blood on clothing. Is that believed to be from the night that Noah disappeared and that Noah died, or could that have been from? Is there any light you can shed on those documents and the blood in the home?
There is some blood that did come back as Noah Tomlin.
And that was in Julia Tomlin's home.
That is in Julia Tomlin's home. DNA has confirmed that.
So what are the next steps as far as the investigation goes for you guys?
Well, the next step is the prosecution of this matter. As far as the investigation, we're still looking at some other leads concerning the disposal of the body and who may have assisted her when the murder actually took place, as far as after the fact, may have helped her dispose of the body.
Do you think it's something she could have done on her own, or that she had to have had someone help her in this case?
We do know someone helped her dispose of the body. There's no question about that. The question is the intent and whether the person had knowledge that there was a body in the bag. And so there's further exploration concerning that matter.
Are you able to talk about how the state his body was in when he was found in the steam plant?
Yes. The body was in a state of advanced decomposition. So basically, and I hate to be gruesome with the specifics, but imagine a item, so to speak, that has a pamper wrapped around it and one leg and some muscle. That's it.
So have there been any changes to the timeline that you're able to share that we've been working off of, kind of his disappearance report on the 24th?
The timeline still matches.
Okay.
Nothing has changed, and to be quite honest with you, we believed that we were going to have this type of finding, but we had to wait until the autopsy report confirmed what we thought was a unfortunate likelihood.
And the skull was found in addition to, correct, at the steam plant? Am I understanding that?
No, what we have is we have bone fragments.
Okay.
So let me explain this part to you. So when the medical examiner did her examination, she also brought in an anthropologist. This anthropologist literally pieced together the bone fragments of Noah Tomlin. So she basically put his skeletal body together for them to be able to examine whether there were any injuries to the skeletal frame. That's how we were able to establish the fractures to the skull, the fractures to the jaw, the rib fractures, and because the leg was still, one of the legs was still intact, we were able to see the bruising that was on that leg that was consistent with abuse.
Do you guys believe some type of tool or weapon was used to torture him, or?
It's hypothetical, but given the nature of the severity of the injury, outside of hitting that child with a blunt force object, or literally taking that child and swinging that child and hitting his head against another blunt force object, I don't see how that injury could have been sustained otherwise.
And you guys have put countless hours into this. I mean, we covered, you guys digging through that steam plant. At the end of the day, what does justice look like for you in this case?
Justice looked like Julia Tomlin being held fully accountable for the death of her son. And to me, that's prison. She should never, ever get the opportunity to ever hold another baby or to ever be in a caretaker role with another child of any nature.
We do know that there were other children that lived at that home with her. Are you exploring any more child neglect charges or any other charges against, in regards to the other children that were in the home?
Well, child abuse charges have been taken out for the other two remaining children who were in the home. So There are 3 child abuse charges already pending, and they include the other 2 children who were in the home as well.
Do you know their ages?
Off the top of my head, one was, I believe, 8 months, and the other one was, Noah was 3, I believe it was.
And does she have any previous charges as far as, I know you said some are pending, but in the past that you guys have looked into?
She had a prior conviction in Newport News for felony child neglect, yes. And that was about 10 years ago.
Do you believe she should have even been able to have custody of Noah at this time based on those previous charges?
Well, it's not my position or decision to make. Was she a danger to children? Absolutely. Was she a risk to be in a caretaker role with other children? Absolutely, no question about it. So, do I feel that the ball was dropped? Again, it's not my place to say, but clearly she should not have been in a position to be caretaker of anyone's child.
Can we get a copy of the autopsy report?
I have already authorized the medical examiner to release it to the public. So if you make a request to the medical examiner, you can now, as of today, get a copy of it. In addition, I would like to take the time to thank the Hampton Police Department, who did an outstanding job in this investigation. We would not be where we are today but for the countless hours and the sacrifice of the officers. I have Detective Smith, who is up here with me now. He's the lead investigator and has done an outstanding job in putting this case together as a whole. In addition, the Federal Bureau of Investigations, they also came in and assisted us with the investigation and with the search and even being able to really obtain some very incriminating statements from the defendant. So we'd like to thank them as well. I'm also joined by Chris Young, who is my co-counselor in this matter. He's a senior assistant here, as well as Carla Reeves, who is the director of victim services. And so we want to just let the public know that I know that this particular act was not an act just against this child, but it's an act against our community. Because at the end of the day, all of us initially, when we heard this child was missing, was hoping that this child could be found, and hoping that this child was not in any type of danger, only to find out that the child was not only deceased, but discovered in a steam plant like he was yesterday's trash. So this case is just extreme and it's horrific, and we want to make sure the public knows that we will hold her accountable. She will be held accountable for her behavior, no question about that.